Hi there. My name is Patty Zullo, and I'm the Senior Director of Smart City Solutions at Spectrum Enterprise, coming to you live from the Coachella Valley here in Southern California today. A little housekeeping before we get started. As the moderator, I'll be taking questions at the end of the session, but feel free to go ahead and put your questions in the questions box, and I'll go ahead and I'll respond to those at the end. In my role with Spectrum Enterprise, it's my goal to meet with cities on a daily basis to help them reach their goals of becoming a smart city. While smart cities has been spoken about for many years, there's really no generally accepted definition of what a smart city is. However, one motivating factor driving cities to really start this journey is economic development, making their city a better place to live, work, and play. Next slide. Whether making transit through your city more efficient, tackling your sustainability goals, providing better situational awareness, which can really deliver the right resources to the right incident in the most efficient way, or generally making citizen interaction with the city a more optimal experience, cities are embracing people, processes, and technologies on their road to becoming a smart city. Next slide. Before we jump into the presentation, let's do a little test. We're going to test your smart city IQ. There's 3 numbers and a phrase I'm going to ask you to remember. 4.5, 44%, 2/3, and the phrase light pole. Got your answers? Let's see what they mean. By the year 2023, it's estimated that there will be 4.5 billion sensors connected to the internet. 44% of cities are motivated to invest in smart city technologies to foster economic development. 2/3 of the world population lives in urban areas, and 2/3 of the world's energy is consumed in cities. And finally, light pole. You're going to have to wait till the middle of the presentation to find out how the light pole plays in. Next slide. Next slide. What makes up a smart city? So really, when you talk about smart cities, while there's not a clear definition of a smart city is really one that takes into consideration efficiency, being inclusive, offers competitiveness for their citizens, innovation, connectedness, being able to drive connectivity for everybody in the city, and informational and insights to be able to deliver data and be able to leverage the data that you as the city is collecting on a day-to-day basis. Next slide. Now, cities today have their challenges. Even before COVID hit, cities were experiencing challenges. And one of the big pain points we hear constantly when we talk with cities is, how are we going to balance this budget? How can we invest in technology if we can't even balance our budget? And the smart cities really allows you to understand how to optimize efficiencies. We're working with the city that wanted to optimize their fleet operations. And by optimizing their fleet operation, they were saving wear and tear. They were getting in front of maintenance. They were identifying better ways to be efficient about gas. So there's a lot of ways that smart cities can actually help deliver ROI back into the city. Citizens are now more and more asking of the city itself to deliver services in a more efficient way. They want to be able to interact with City Hall on their time. They want to be able to pay, whether it be a permit or a parking ticket, online. So just better ways to do that interaction. Citizens really are expecting cities to be able to deliver that. However, the acceleration of digital may be confusing to some cities because there's so much activity going on. Moving to a pure digital operational model may not be something you can do immediately, but there's steps to take to be able to gather that data, leverage that data, analyze that data for the city. And then finally, just basically complex systems, being able to be resilient and having your workforce that is trained on the newest efficiencies and newest digital techniques to be able to respond to your citizens' needs. Next slide. The way that we look at cities and when we talk to cities in the spectrum footprint, it really depends on their ability to become smart and convert some of these challenges to areas that make sense for them in their city. So whether it be energy consumption, being able to reduce that, being able to measure it, identify it, learn to find ways to reduce it. The infrastructure on every single city I talk to is deteriorating. Really being able to understand how to plan for those infrastructure goals. We'll talk about that in a little while. Population growth, while it is certainly exploding and cities are certainly a place that a lot of people are still residing in, maybe the population itself is changing. That demographic is changing. The general age group of your city may be maturing or getting younger, depending upon the shifts that are happening. What kind of services do you need to be able to provide based on what the demographic is telling you? So some of the innovative models and the opportunities is really understanding the investment, how to invest in smart infrastructure to be able to offer them maybe as a service, be able to get that ROI that most infrastructure projects, and by infrastructure, I mean essentially anything you can touch and feel, the water, the light poles, the garbage collection, the energy consumption, those are all infrastructure. And, disruptive technology is certainly never easy. It's not easy for anyone, and cities certainly are no different. So really being able to provide a way to make the cities feel comfortable in deploying some of these technologies. Don't try to boil the ocean, do it a step at a time. And so that's really what we're going to talk about today in this presentation. Next slide. So really smart projects can address any of your city pain points. And I don't want you to believe after taking this or seeing this presentation that we've got all the answers, because really what the discussions that I have with cities on a daily basis, they're about the art of the possible. Every city is unique. Your goals are unique. Your citizens are unique. What you want to be able to achieve is unique. Where you are in your smart city maturity is unique. And so really partnering with someone like Spectrum Enterprise that understands that, can listen to what you want to be able to achieve in the short term and in the long term, and help you get to those goals. So, of course, you've seen some, and I'm sure you've read some articles about where smart city is. We hear a lot about smart water, transportation, public safety. Those are opportunities to engage with with our cities. However, don't let this be the end all to be all. We have a city that we're working with right now that happens to be on the water that has deployed underwater drones and is doing counting of fish as it goes by to really understand what the marine science capabilities are, and be able to understand what the environment effects are having on the water and the fish population. That's not on anybody's use cases, but again, it's the art of the possible discussions. It was important to that city, and we engaged with that city to allow them and help their dreams come true. Next slide. So what is a smart city, and why should cities make the investment? Smart cities are a journey, so it's really important for cities to really understand how to become a smart city and what it really takes. Next slide. So when you look at a smart city, most people will say, oh, sure, it's connectivity. You need connectivity, you need sensors, and you need data. Those are the three things that you need in order to become a smart city. But what makes the city smart is the ability not only to collect that data, but actually leverage it, analyze it, and visualize it to make optimized, efficient changes in real time or in long term for the city. That's what makes a city smart. So regardless of what use cases that you're deploying or what initiatives that you want to deploy, make sure that you have strong connectivity throughout the city, sensors and devices deployed throughout the city. And a sensor can be anything from a smart parking meter to a camera to even a mobile device. And then the most important layer is the data analytics to be able to ingest all that information, be able to do what if analysis, and be able to understand how the data that you're seeing you can make improvements on in your city. Next slide. So as I indicated, we've got sensors and devices that are deployed in the city. We've got connectivity, and that connectivity, you should strive to have that connectivity be robust and ubiquitous. Most people think that a cable company like Spectrum, we're the ones that are determining how those sensors are connecting to our network. And the bottom line is we're not. The sensor devices are commercially available devices, whether it be a camera or a parking meter, and they're already have built-in connectivity into those. And so they'll tell us they need Wi-Fi or LTE or fiber or even LoRa or NB-IoT, some of the newer connectivity methods. They're telling us what that is. The thing that Spectrum can do, though, is we provide this nice, ubiquitous, robust network throughout the city that we can ingest any type of sensor using any type of data and still be able to get that information back to you to be able to do that analysis. Analytics, I told you, is probably the most important layer to be able to ingest the data and do some visualization for it. And then interfaces. The data is not useful unless you can actually see it and make some changes. So those are the 4 layers of what a smart city architecture looks like. Next slide. In our discussions with smart cities, every single city will ask me, why should they take the time? Smart cities is a journey. It's really not one and done. There's lots to be done in smart cities. And the motivating factor that we hear most often from those cities starting their journey, it's because it's a competitive advantage. They want to make their city a better place to live, work, and play, but they also want to differentiate themselves from cities among their neighbors. And so when there's businesses looking to open a business, when there's residents looking to own a home or move to your city, why would they pick your city over another city that's neighboring? Well, it's the services that you're offering. It's the amount of digital information that you're able to provide them. Those are the reasons that we're finding it's a better quality of life, that cities are investing in it and partnering with Spectrum to be able to deliver on those efficiencies. Next slide. When Spectrum looks at smart cities, this is how we see the landscape. And it's not unique to Spectrum at all. If you look at other smart city vendors, everybody has basically 4 general categories. So we'll start at the left. The top part of the screen really tells you what the use cases are. These are some consistent reasons or consistent use cases and initiatives when we talk to cities that they're telling us they want to implement. And first column, left-hand side, economic development and civic engagement, really understanding how to make your city easier for your citizens to interact, your tourists to interact. Digital kiosks are a huge, huge part of that, being able to have wayfinding or charging your device or being able to find what events are happening in the weekend. More and more cities are deploying these nice, very, very sleek looking devices out in their cities to be able to help with their interaction. Also allowing the city to gather information on how people are using these devices and what's important to them on the device so that they can be reactive and change that content as they see fit. Having an open data portal, of course, is a really important way to get a better interaction with your constituents. And really what that means is making data available on a portal that I, as your citizen, can go into at my convenience and really interact with the city and find out information. So it's exposing some of your data and allowing me to actually react to it. Digital twin, the very bottom one, is a fairly new concept in smart cities. It's been used in manufacturing for a really long time. But what digital twin is, it allows you to have a 3D representation of your exact city, where every fire hydrant is, where every light pole is, where every crosswalk is, where every building is. It's your city in a 3D representation. And city planners are using that 3D representation before they even put one shovel in the ground. They're using it to do what if analysis. When you're making streets one way, if you want to put different crosswalks in, what effect the 3 to 5 year plans for your city will have on other parts of the city's infrastructure. So it's a great way to have a graphical interface of your particular city and be able to have that visualization of how some of the changes that you're planning to implement will affect that particular part of the city and other parts of the city as well. The second pillar here is utilities and infrastructure. That's really what most of your strongest ROI is going to come from those cities that own their own roadway lights. Smart lighting is a great way to deploy and get energy savings when you put LED infrastructure out there. Lots and lots of ROI on that. Some of it can be up to 80% from high pressure sodium or induction lights. So a lot of cities are using that energy savings and either putting it back into their smart initiatives or putting it back into the budget. Same thing with water management. When you save water, you save energy, you save money. So those are some immediate benefits of deploying any of the smart utilities and infrastructure. Intelligent transportation is probably the number one initiative that cities are looking to do, making the commute through your city less frustrating, being able to provide reservations for parking, or just being able to show your people coming into the city where available parking is, allows for that interaction with the city to be so much better, less frustrating. More people will come back if they know the commute through the city tends to be easier and friendlier. Also, there's a lot of cars out there that have been built past 2016. Just about any car past 2016 has a computer in it and it's connected. Being able to gather information from those computers can tell you things like, where potholes are, what the speed of the road is, and maybe if you don't ever, if there's never, traffic on some road, and all of a sudden you see that the road has got bumper to bumper traffic, maybe there's a light that's out or an accident that has happened. It tells you additional information. It's all privatized information. It's all very anonymous, but it allows it in an aggregate form. It allows you really to get a lot of information about roadway conditions and how people are using the roads and the traffic itself. And of course, autonomous vehicles. We're working with a lot of cities right now that really are trying to deploy autonomous vehicles. A lot of it has to do around tourism. They find that if they can get tourists in an autonomous vehicle and get them around the city, it actually helps in transit. It helps with the traffic. You don't have people looking around trying to figure out where to park and where to get off and how to drive into parking areas. It gives them a much easier way to commute around a heavily tourist area in certain cities. And then finally, on the far right-hand side, public safety. When I think public safety, one of the things that I think of immediately is situational awareness. And really what that is getting the right resource to the right incident in the most efficient manner. So we were working with a city up in the Northeast, and for instance, they were getting 911 calls in the middle of the night saying that that citizens thought a bomb went off. Before they sent the bomb squad out, they took a look at what the data that was coming in, and they found it wasn't a bomb, it was actually a gas main explosion. Still not good, no one was hurt, but they were able to proactively send the right resource to manage the right incident and send a note to all their citizens on what the problem was, that they had it handled, and that there shouldn't be any worry. So a lot of public safety, whether it be weather, whether it be gunshot detection, there's a lot of things that you can do in the public safety realm. But again, these are just some of the initiatives. These are not by any means a comprehensive list of all the initiatives you can implement with smart technologies. The bottom half of the screen is really what makes the city smart, and that's the analytics and visualization. Getting all of that data, every single one of those sensor technologies that will implement the top half of that screen are going to be feeding data, and that data needs to go somewhere, and you need to be able to visualize it. Of course, in the middle of that is a really strong, robust, ubiquitous network that can accept any type of data as quickly as it's being fed to it and get it back to the city to be able to do that analysis. Next slide, please. So one of the questions I get a lot when I go talk to cities, in Spectrum's footprint, the majority of our cities probably are under 300,000 citizens. We have a very large population that are probably still under 50,000 citizens. And I get talking with these cities, and they say, obviously, I'm too small to be a smart city. And really, that's not true. Any city can be a smart city, depending upon what your initiatives are and how you go about it. And of course, who you partner with is also important. Next slide. So some of the key considerations of looking at a smart city is every city is unique. And when I meet with cities, the one thing that I don't do is I don't tell them how to become smart. I listen to what their goals are, what your unique goals and what you're trying to achieve. I indicated I live here in Coachella Valley. I live very close to Palm Desert. Palm Desert has 2 universities. And so maybe what they want to be able to do is elevate and use some of that information in STEM classes. We're getting a lot more engagement with our university partners, and what they want to be able to do is build curriculum to help their students understand machine learning and artificial intelligence, all which has to do with smart cities. So that's important, but that's unique to some cities that actually have a strong population of universities. You really understanding what you're trying to achieve and be able to work with your partners, and certainly don't go it alone, but working with your partners to really understand what that plan is and determining how to get there, both in small increments. We tell cities, we try to guide them not to boil the ocean, pick 1 or 2 initiatives, drive those initiatives to 1 or 2 neighborhoods, prove it out, let the citizens see what you're trying to do, bring in sponsorship from not only the city, but bring in sponsorship from your citizens as well as private industry, and be able to gather that consensus to move forward, that everybody is working with you to become a smart city. Next slide. So back in the very beginning, we took that quiz and I asked you to remember the light pole. Well, here it is. So the reason why we bring a light pole into this is because it happens to be a phenomenal piece of real estate that's already in your city. We have a lot of cities right now that are buying back from the utility their light poles, their roadway lights in their city. And a lot of the reasoning happens to be the fact that the utility hasn't been aggressive enough in changing out their light poles, their luminaires, into LED. And when you change it out, as I indicated, you get really good energy savings, which a lot of cities are putting back into the city budget or putting back into other smart technologies. So again, having those light poles, if you already own those light poles, the things you can do with it not only is LED lights, which of course is phenomenal, but putting other sensors on it. These light poles are strategically placed throughout your city. They already have energy going to them, so they're already lit up, so you don't have to worry about running electricity. A lot of the light pole technology that you can put the sensors on will either have a battery inside of them or can connect right to the electricity that's already in the light pole. So really having that main focus of putting other sensors on top of your light pole really allows you to have full coverage across your city. I indicated that there are really good statistics when you change your light infrastructure from high pressure sodium or induction to LED. You don't have to listen to me or believe me. You can certainly do a search for it online, but we are seeing that a lot of our cities are making smart lighting, whether they want to turn the lighting on or dimming it when it's not being used, or putting different beacons or putting panic buttons. We're working with a university right now that wanted to accent some of their panic buttons on campus, and they wanted to put it on every light pole. It connects right back to university police. So again, it's allowing for better connectivity, allowing for better services that you're providing to your citizens. Next slide. So, having examples of how some other cities are using their smart technology sometimes helps to put some of the pieces together. I've already talked about the situational awareness, where we had that city that thought a bomb went off and it ended up being a gas main explosion. So that's certainly one. We had another city that we were working with that has a lot of parks, and the parks were getting very run down. And what they wanted was a way to be able to enhance the usage of the parks by the citizens. However, because the parks were getting run down, an element was starting to move into the parks that weren't necessarily allowing the citizens to use their parks whenever they wanted. So we took a look at the data that we were collecting, and this was actually data that the city already had. The Parks Department, we found, was watering their parks between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. And the police were, the data that we had, we saw that the police were being called out to those same parks between 1 and 3 in the morning. We changed the watering schedule between 9 and 10. We changed it to 1 and 3. And crime went down about 80%. Again, didn't have to deploy anything new. It was just understanding the data that the city already had. And even though the Parks Department and the Police Department are in the same exact city, chances are they're not talking to each other at that level. And that's what data analytics can really bring to a city, is really understanding some of the value that you already have, that the data that you already are collecting, and being able to make sense of it at a different level than just talking in the hallway. We talked about LED retrofits and the volume and the amount of savings that you can get for energy. Vision Zeros and Complete Streets are two initiatives that actually in 2019 became so prevalent that cities wanted to manage them. Congress, there's a bill in front of Congress right now that will give funding to cities to be able to manage Vision Zero and Complete Streets. So both essentially very similar. What they allow you to do is understand how people are using crosswalks, whether it be bikes or scooters or pedestrians or cars. And it's the attempt of Vision Zero is to get any collisions in a crosswalk to zero. Now, who wouldn't want that? So you can't fix what you don't know what's happening. And so really the very first step in Vision Zero is to measure what's happening. Get sensors that can tell you where collisions are happening, or near misses, or maybe what you'll find back to the example where your demographic is changing. Maybe you'll find your demographic has changed significantly. People are getting a little older in your city in certain areas. And so the crosswalks need to be extended a little bit longer in times. The type of analytics that Vision Zero use cases collect can help you make those changes, because it can help you understand what's happening today. So first you measure, and then you can make you can change by making some implementation suggestions. And then smart transportation. I've indicated to you that one of the very most common things that our cities are telling us is they need to be able to make the commute through the city, once you get off a highway exit or just through the city, whether it be when a normal day, a commute day, or when there are events, being able to make sure that you can get people around the city as easy as possible. And one of the best ways to be able to do that is by interfacing with a mobile app that your citizens can download, or people visiting the city can download, so they can get that real-time information that they can determine, yes, there's available parking on this exact street or in this exact garage, or that there's an event happening downtown today. So, take notice, and if you get off another exit that's a little bit farther, or you make a right turn right here, you can avoid all of the traffic. So there's a lot of interaction that's happening. And again, these are smart city solutions and examples that your citizens are asking about today. We're just helping with you. We're partnering with you to make these smart city proof of concepts real in your city, using your citizens, using your data, and really making sure that your city can respond in the way that will make your city better than the guy next to you, more competitive. Next slide. So at Spectrum Enterprise, the goal of my team is to really become the trusted advisor in your smart city implementations. Next slide. So why do you really partner with somebody like Spectrum? I indicated to you earlier in this presentation that about 4.5 billion connected sensors are expected by the year 2023. So it's a revolution that's happening, and it's a disruption that's happening. Data is flowing out of every single one of these sensors. And really what you need, if you're having all of this data flowing throughout your city, is a very strong, trusted, robust, ubiquitous network, a network that can accept any protocol regardless of its origin, grab that data and deliver it back to you to allow you in the city to be able to manage that. When Spectrum partners with the city, even though we're collecting, our network is collecting all the data, Spectrum has no ownership and doesn't see the data at all. We want nothing to do with that. All we want to be able to do is provide you with the partners and the devices. We have a very strong partner ecosystem, so we can provide you with all of the devices and sensors to deploy. We have that really strong network that is already probably deployed in your city. And on top of that, we offer the deep data analytics to be able to allow you to make sense of the data. So again, you can improve efficiencies in your specific city. Next slide. When you're working with a partner, whether it be somebody like Spectrum or somebody else, the things that we help our cities understand is, first of all, never do a smart city implementation alone. There's a lot of partners out there that want to help you, whether it be the cable company like us or the network company like us, or the device manufacturer. Don't ever go it alone, because there's a lot of information that you'll be able to help displace and have other people be able to provide you with their expertise. But the main thing when we work with our cities is we want to hear from you. What's unique about your city? What are your initiatives that you want to be able to invest in? What do you want to make your city known for? And those are the ones that we work with our cities with. So whether we do a top-down and a bottom-up approach from the network, we've got it really strong. From the top down, we've got a really strong partner ecosystem that we're building constantly that we'll bring to your city. That those network devices have been tested on our network, so we know that they can be optimized to deliver the data that you need. And then, of course, the secure data analytics that will help you be able to deploy this in a very secure fashion. Next slide. So to get started with projects, again, compelling business case. We love to talk to cities about what their discovery is, the art of the possible, building a business case to really understand what it is that the city wants to be, either today or in 5 years from now. Smart cities, as I indicated, is a journey, so it's not one and done. It's not like deploying parking and you can just walk away from it. Those are things you can build on through the years to help your citizens really gather more services for them. Run the effort as a portfolio. So don't think, like I said, it's not just one thing and you can walk away. You can build on any sensor that you're deploying out there in the city to really gather data. You know, last year when we were working with cities, most of our cities were coming to us and saying, tell me about smart cities. Tell me what I need to be able to do. Tell me what you have and how I can be smart. And so we would tell them, you know, give them the examples that we just gave on how other cities are implementing it, and every city is unique. Since the pandemic hit, we're now getting really specific questions from cities. They're in downtown Palm Springs. They're looking to close down the right-hand lane to make it better for social distancing for the restaurants. And so how do we work with that to be able to identify that there's a new traffic pattern, or closing areas that used to be open to cars and now are going to be walkways, and allow pedestrians to really travel more freely, again, for social distancing and more flexibility. So now with the pandemic, we're still getting calls from cities to say, these are more specific. We have really specific things that we want to be able to accomplish. Which sensors can we deploy to help us gather more information on a day-to-day basis, to be able to better understand and keep our citizens safe, but also keep our city running, and the traffic through the city being as optimal as possible. So even now, even with the pandemic, we're still getting a lot of interest from our cities on smart cities. When you look at deploying your smart city business case, look for small wins, because these things take a while. We've been working with cities now for over 2 years, and some of the remarkable insights that we're getting from the city have really only started to flow in the past 6 months or so. So it takes a while between doing the planning and understanding the neighborhoods that you're going to deploy all these sensors, collecting the data, understanding what that data really means, and how you can implement the efficiencies that data is telling you about. And then once you start getting those efficiencies, you then can build on that to make it a larger deployment. Communicate throughout the journey. Bring in your citizens, bring in private industry, get them to be a part of that sponsorship group, so that they're there with you. And probably they'll have some pretty innovative ideas. I know that when we talk to citizens, they certainly aren't shy about telling us what they would like to see in their city. And they also have some pretty entrepreneurial, innovative ideas, again, that can help you identify that. We also work a lot, like I indicated, with universities. Hackathons. Hackathons are great ways to be able to say, great, here's some interesting data that we can provide that we're collecting from these sensors. What can you do with this data? How would you be able to utilize that data in our city to make our city better and smarter? So those are some of the things that we can also talk to you about. Focus on results. So again, it's a journey. So pick 1 or 2 things to be able to show in the pilot or the proof of concept that you have been able to achieve. And we actually encourage our cities to look for vendors who are willing to do proof of concepts and pilots with them. As I indicated, smart cities isn't really cookie cutter. I can't say that something that I did in Los Angeles will work in a city like La Quinta. Those are 2 entirely different cities. So really, how do we get that engagement? How do you get that uniqueness out of your pilot? The best way to do that is to have a pilot, partner with people who really understand working with your city. One of the benefits that Spectrum has, of course, is that we're already a network provider in these cities. And so it's not like we're going to go away after the pilot is over. We really want to work with you and better understand how we can continue to expand what kind of deployments that you can do to make that city smarter. A really interesting statistic that I saw that is really hard for me to believe is only 31% of city leaders, when asked, say they have an integrated smart city strategy. Our goal at Spectrum Enterprise and our smart city team is to make sure that number grows exponentially over the next couple of years. So we're happy to hear what you have to say. We'd love to be able to work with you in order to implement those smart city technologies and your aspirations on smart cities. So that's it for my presentation. I will be more than happy to take questions at your time. If there are any questions in the Q&A session, more than happy to take that. So I'm not seeing any questions coming in. my information. You can certainly get it from the team. Oh, I think we've got a couple coming in. Hold on. Okay, so the first question that's come in is, what will be the impact on personal privacy in a fully implemented smart city? Privacy is certainly a huge issue that we've got with our cities. I've been in smart city technology for about 10 years. When I first got into the technology, the sensor devices didn't really consider data privacy or personal privacy. Now, even camera technology, video technology that's deployed has privacy filters. When you deploy video, in some cases, what's most important is for you to actually do counting. So, for instance, right now we've got social distancing of 6 feet. It would be really great to understand how far away people are from each other. And so I don't need to know that it's me. I just need to know that there's a human and then another human, and what the distance is between them. So the sensor technologies have really responded really well over personal privacy, being able to implement analytics and implement features that will help you be able to still gather data, but not necessarily impose on somebody's personal privacy. In other words, they're even in speaker technology. Most of the speaker technology that you hear, the noise sensors, don't even understand a language. They understand sounds, and their machine learning is built to understand a car crash or crashing glass or something, church bells or airplane noise. So a lot of the technologies have come an awful long way in order to help us improve on the technology and make sure that when it's deployed in your city, the citizens feel that they are not being watched, that they can still have a smart city without giving up their personal privacy. I hope I've answered that question. Second question, in addition to the above, how will the city authorities address this issue? Yeah, so we work with them a lot. Every single city we work with has different regulations about what can be used. There are a whole bunch of cities right now, I'm sure you've read about them in the press, that do not allow camera technology, period. And that's fine. We get that. There are other ways to deploy sensors to collect data without necessarily imposing on a camera technology. A lot of the camera technology can do processing right at the edge, which means it processes right at the camera. It's never stored. All it does is it does a little hash mark to say, yep, I saw a person. Yes, I saw a person. Yes, I saw another person. And it just counts. And then it just gets rewritten. So there's, again, the technology itself has responded to the challenges that the cities have come back to the device manufacturers and said, listen, we can't deploy this if it's going to expose our citizens to any sort of privacy concerns. So there is a lot of that going on. When we work with our cities, we understand going in, we try to understand immediately what regulations, if any, that the city has and what they've implemented on any sort of technology, whether it be video technology, analytics, and how they're using it today in other areas. So again, every city is unique, so we work with each city, understanding what their regulations say. The next question: what is the estimated cost to convert a city into a full smart city? I wish I knew what a full smart city was. I have to tell you, it grows. It's a growing thing. It really depends on every single city, and every city is unique on what they're getting ready to deploy, how big the city is, what the topography looks like. I'm working with a couple of cities that have a really, really mountainous topology, and it's harder, obviously, to deploy things in that area because maybe it's more rural, and so you need to do extra things there. There is no good answer on what the cost is on a full smart city, because there's no definition on what a real smart city is. You need to define, every city needs to define what a smart city is, and then work with the partners such as Spectrum and other partners that are in the smart city space to understand what is the deployment, how would it be deployed, what kind of additions do you need to make, what does the city need to do. For instance, on a LED light, an LED light may only be like $150 per light, but in order to connect all those lights and gather information and do analytics on that, that's another cost. So you have to take a look at each individual deployment that you want to add to your city and then cost it out that way. Now, in a lot of cases, funding has turned over the past 5 or 10 years from the city doing a lot of its funding. There's a lot of grants that are available today. There's a lot of websites that actually tell you what those grants are, both for public safety, for transportation. Homeland Security has a whole bunch of them. There's ways to be CDBG grants also can help offset some of the costs. And then, of course, there's the whole public-private partnership, which the city of Columbus has really done a phenomenal job to start with 10 million and getting it up to, I think it's 90 million right now. So there are ways to be able to finance this. And I wish I had a good answer for you on what the cost was, but I just don't, because every single city is unique and every deployment is unique. How safe and secure is the data collected by a smart city managers, and what legal protection do citizens have with the respect of how the data is used? Yeah, again, when we deploy the smart city technology, we'll collect the data based on what the city tells us they need. So if they need traffic data, for instance, we'll count the cars and we'll send it back to the city. How the city utilizes that data, we look to work with the city to make sure that they've got fail-safes there to be able to ensure privacy and security of the data that they are collecting. Most of the data, though, from most of the sensors is turning into anonymized data, meaning that even if you were able to deliver back the fact that there were 5 people forming a crowd outside of City Hall, you wouldn't know who those 5 people were. You just know that there are 5 human bodies outside of City Hall, and if that's not normal, then you can send an alert to someone. So the city itself should have data policies. Most cities that are looking to move towards a smart city implementation are starting to gather their data policies to understand how the data would be used, how long it's stored. Some cities, for instance, on video, if you collect video, you have to store it for like 3 or 5 years. Some cities don't even want to bother with that. First of all, storage is really expensive, so they want to look for a different way to be able to gather that information. And then when it's anonymized, storing the video doesn't help you at all, because all you're doing is essentially storing metadata or hash marks. So again, every city we're working with on our smart city proof of concepts and pilots is implementing a data protection plan to ensure, one, they can look at their citizens in the eyes and ensure that they've got privacy, the data is all private and it's anonymized, and 2, telling the citizens exactly how that data will be used. There's some great resources online from cities that have deployed their smart technologies that have really harnessed how they're using the data and how they've been able to write this data plan. So don't hesitate to look that up online as well. Are there any examples of cities that closest represent how a smart city is developed or being developed? Well, I mean, I certainly can talk to St. Petersburg, Florida, which I know is not in California, but it's the latest one that we're working on right now. And we met with them about 2 years ago and asked them, what their initiatives were. And they started with smart lighting. So we said, great, let's pick a couple of neighborhoods. We'll deploy some smart poles. We'll deploy smart lights. And after about 6 months of working with them to really understand the smart light and being able to do automatic dimming and beaconing and have speakers and panic buttons, they came to us and said, well, you know, one of our real problems is that we have a really bad intersection that people are getting hit. So we need better lighting there, but also how can we figure out what is going on in the intersection so we can determine if we need to change anything that's happening, any timing of the lights, any timing of the walkway intersection. And to make it even more challenging, it was on a university campus. So they said most of the kids on the university usually have ear pods in, so they're not even listening for noise and sounds. If they see a crosswalk and they see that it's able to cross, they're going to go ahead and cross regardless if there's a car coming. They're not necessarily looking both ways. So again, we helped them. We built off the smart light concept. We brought the smart intersection concept, and we're still working with them to really understand all of the data that can possibly be collected to help them with digital signage. They're putting bots in the ground to be able to light up to hopefully make people aware. They're putting signage up before the intersection to let drivers know that there is a potentially hazardous situation ahead to pay attention, that there might be people in the middle of the road. They're also, they've come up with, I think it's called a scramble. It's a 4-way intersection that you can cross in any direction, diagonal included. So you can cross in the middle of the road, which again, from a driver's perspective, may impede the fact that they used to be able to turn right on red and now they can't because they have people crossing when the lights are red. So being able to give better awareness, better lighting, better analytics in that intersection to help them ensure that they've got people moving through the process. You know, you look at the city of Columbus, you know, they started with just transportation, and it took them about 2 years after they got the grant to really embrace what they could possibly do with this grant money. And they brought in every partner they can think of. They brought in local industry, they brought in the universities, they brought in everybody to really identify the transportation initiatives, and that the transportation initiatives have just grown to other things like smart lights and smart water and smart waste, and being able to really leverage the basis that they have, which was understanding one implementation, one use case, and that really grew to really encompassing different parts of the city. Different neighborhoods may have different requirements. I worked really heavily with the city of San Diego, and you know, the beach area in San Diego required some really unique use cases. People apparently were parking there using like RVs, so taking up 2 and 3 parking spaces on like a Tuesday, so that by the time Saturday rolled around, they would have their spot saved at the beach, so they wouldn't have to worry about the parking on a Saturday morning. So really, that's an interesting use case, but it's certainly a use case that certainly doesn't happen in the gas lamp district in San Diego. So different neighborhoods have different requirements, and really understanding and working with the city to understand what they want to be able to do, understanding what their initiatives is really important. And when we work with the city, one of the key meetings we have with the city once we decide we're engaging together as a partnership is we have a discovery session, and we bring in as many departments as the city has to bring in to let them know what the art of the possible is. Because just talking about what you can do and how you can deploy sensor technologies and how you can collect data, it really gets those discussions, those creative discussions and innovative discussions from the city to say, wow, one of my biggest challenges is the fact that, you know, we need to have better parking at the beach. Well, how do we do that? How can we accomplish that? And so really having everybody pitch in to say what their some of their innovations are really helps not only understand what the long term is in the city for smart city deployment, but really can give you additional sponsorship to be able to say, sure, we can work together in order to get this all accomplished. So some of those are really, for us, Spectrum, those are really exciting discovery sessions for us. Any other questions? More than happy to answer. for you. Looks like we're at the end of our questions. We've got about 6 minutes left. I can give you that 6 minutes back to your time. I thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you had a good meeting. I hope the rest of your event, it goes phenomenal. And again, happy to talk to any of you once you want to put together a strategy or have a discovery session on how to become a smart city. We're happy to partner with our cities. I wish you guys a phenomenal day. Thank you so much.